Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast. So we are about to hit motivational hip-hop assembly season. I have my first couple assemblies of the year at some elementary schools in California coming up next week. If you're not really familiar with the hip-hop motivational assemblies, I do beatboxing and rapping and dancing in K through 12 schools to empower students to take ownership over the story they tell themselves about who they are and what they're capable of achieving. So if you want to check out a demo video, you can go to blakebrandis.com. And also, I do speaking on personal development topics that we cover at Motivational Millennial and also talk about working with millennials. So feel free to drop me a line if you're interested in any of that at blake@motivationalmillennial.com. Our guest today is Charles Carmody, who is the director of the Charleston Music Hall. And Charles has done an awesome job of building a sense of community around the music scene in South Carolina. And so we hope that you stick around for the after show where Ivy and I share some of our key takeaways and that you enjoy the interview.
Woo!
Hello and welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Blake Brandis.
And I'm Ivy LeClaire.
Our Motivational Millennial guest today is Charles Carmody, who is currently the director of the Charleston Music Hall in South Carolina, which holds over 200 events per year. Charles founded a promotions company, Murias Entertainment, in 2014 to put on smaller events throughout Charleston. He also co-manages the band SUSTO and works with several other artists through the Art Council, a locally based artist management company. His mission is to make Charleston the greatest music city in the world. Charles, thanks for being on the show today, man.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. The greatest music city in the world, indeed.
How do you feel that progress is going so far?
Slowly but surely.
Awesome.
Daily struggle, but we're getting there. It's a good thing.
Well, Charles, we'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're up to at the moment and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I'm the executive director of the Charleston Music Hall, which is a 965-seated historic theater in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. Been here for 4 years. And I also recently started my own entertainment company, Murias Entertainment. I wanted to do weirder stuff that was meant for smaller rooms and different spaces, put on different events in different spaces. So Murias kind of formed out of me booking the music hall to be able to do stuff in warehouses, stuff in other venues, stuff all over the place. So that's been really fun. And then that's kind of also moved over naturally into artist management. Kind of a rotating door these days of trying to help local artists out just with advice, be it business or artistic or creative. And I've also been with SUSTO for a year, co-managing them with this guy, Jared Wilkins, who works with Gold Mountain Entertainment. Also the music director for the Charleston Wine and Food Festival. In March every year in Charleston, book 35 bands every year for that festival. I work with the city on numbers of festivals and just really try and get my hands in all things music in Charleston. So
that's great. And can you take us back to when you just got into music? I know you've got some great passion that sort of started out very organically.
Yeah, I started out as a musician. I started out just with a love. I started out blaring Phantom of the Opera in my bed at 3 years old and losing my mind over that music. And I've always just felt a huge emotional just force behind it, and it's always been really important to me. I started playing music when I was 13, started playing guitar, and got really involved in some different bands and in songwriting, and just started there when I was young, which was a great thing.
So, Charles, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the music promotion side and creating this community event?
Yeah, absolutely. College. I was still playing music. I didn't think I could make it professionally as a musician. And I got this idea to just start creating these gatherings. We called it Bean Night. So we built a stage in my backyard. I got a little PA system. And every Tuesday night, we would host Bean Night. And I'd cook a giant pot of beans and rice. People would bring, whatever, bread or meat to throw in or whatever. And we'd have a a little communal gathering. We'd eat, and then we'd have an open stage for, 3, 4, 5 hours in the backyard, spoken word, music. And we started with like 15 of us who just really wanted to, grow with each other and just kind of like really collaborate with one another. The purpose of it, I wanted people to come together to collaborate. I believe collaboration is one of the most important things, business-wise, emotionally, creatively, whatever. It's huge. And so we came together to kind of share what we were working on, be it songs or poems or thoughts or whatever. And what grew was 15 of us grew to 150 of us in 3 months.
Wow.
And of course, once you get 150 people in your backyard, it kind of evolves into more of a curated event, if you will. So, and I actually started having bands come to me, and they were like, we're in town. We'd love to just come over and play a few songs. It went on for a year in the backyard, and then we outgrew it. And I kind of took it over to this coffee shop courtyard, and it just kind of, it turned more into kind of highlighting specific artists. And that's when I got the bug. I got the itch of like, oh my goodness, this is a thing. Like, this is important to people. And this is something that can really not only change people, but it can help build community, strengthen relationships, and be an amazing outlet for a community. Amazing conversations come out of it. Amazing change, I think, can come out of it. So I kind of started seeing, oh my gosh, like I always felt like there was like music could do larger things, but it actually can, I actually saw the building blocks being placed.
So thank you so much for sharing that amazing origin story of the party that started at 15 and grew to 150. I hear that there was also a great origin story about how you became the executive director at the Charleston Music Hall. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a wild world indeed. I moved back to Charleston in 2012 and was looking for work anywhere really. And I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. What am I going to do? I mean, I was an English major in college. Okay, I love music, but can I work in that? I don't know. So I ended up meeting with this guy, Michael Bennett, who is a hotel developer, but an entrepreneur in all intents of the word. So I ended up meeting with him just to talk, I was just looking for work. I knew he owned hotels. I knew he owned restaurants. And I just wanted to see, just get his advice on Charleston and, what the business market was like in Charleston. And ended up meeting and talking for a long, long time. He read me a poem. We talked about baseball and his kids. And it was beautiful. We sat together for like 3 hours, which I don't think he was intending, but we just connected in a pretty great way. And then at the end, he mentions, and I also own the Charleston Music Hall. It hasn't been open for 3 years. It's not being managed. I don't know what to do with it. But I'll figure out what to do with it one day. And I said, oh my goodness, like I'd love to talk about that. And he said, well, no, like we're out of time, but maybe another time. It's like, okay, all right, no problem. I went home and I couldn't get that out of my head. So I wrote him a letter, typed it on my friend's typewriter. I felt all, cool. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I'd love to get together and have a beer, thinking this guy would have a beer with me. Yeah, beer or, go, I'd love to chat more about the music hall. With it, I went ahead and I wrote up an 8-page business proposal, breaking it down, booking, marketing, management, daily operations. I just kind of spilled how I would build the music hall if I was to be the director, basically. And mailed it to him, snail mailed it to him, kind of thought, that's good. I'm glad I did that. Hopefully he gets it, not thinking anything was going to happen. Well, about 2 weeks later, I get a call from him. I got your letter. Come in. Let's chat. So I go in, all nervous, and we go through a series of interviews and, a series of talking to other people in the business, because it's a larger business, and basically ends up saying, all right, well, I don't know where the keys to the building are. But if you find the keys, you can get in and go see what you can do.
That's amazing. And
so
here you are.
Off I went. Yeah, okay. All right then. That was almost exactly 4 years ago.
That's amazing. And so 4 years later, I believe you put on over 300 events last year. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we did 223 last year. So I've done 800 events in 4 years.
Wow, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
From, a typewritten letter to 800 events.
I can't even, especially like for this facility that was just sitting here for so many years and not giving back to the community and not being utilized. I mean, it's been amazing to see the community get behind it and really support it. It's beautiful.
And along this journey that you've been taking so far, what's the biggest challenge you face, and how have you overcome it or been working to overcome it?
The biggest challenge as far as music hall goes truly has been Charleston is not a music city. It's not. It's also not an A market. It's not Atlanta. It's not Charlotte. It's not that big yet. It's growing quickly, but not that big. So the huge challenge here was trying to convince artists to come and play in Charleston.
Mm.
It was very difficult. But, and I go back to collaboration, what I did was, for the first year it was very difficult to get bookings, and just no one would listen to me, and no one no one's doing anything in Charleston like that. No, we're doing Raleigh and Atlanta, or no, we don't want to drive off 95 that far, whatever the excuse may be. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. So I got in my car and I drove to Nashville, and I set up 15 meetings in 2 days. And I met with anyone and everyone that would meet with me, from promoters to booking agents to managers to artists. I just got as many meetings as I possibly could, and just was preaching the gospel of the music hall and the music in Charleston and the scene in Charleston and the people in Charleston, and how, it's a huge foodie city. People love music. They love food here. And out of that trip, I created a partnership with National Shows 2 in Nashville. And thanks to that partnership, we now have the foundation for our national artist booking. We'll do 55 national artist bookings this year just with National Shows 2.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I love your initiative that you took to just jump in the car and say, I'm going to do something about this myself, in person.
In the age of email and cell phone and technology, I think there's something to be said about actually hitting the street, shaking hands, and going out and meeting and doing face-to-face with people. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of been, in a sense, your model from the beginning, or I'm hearing a value that you have from the beginning, is community, face-to-face interaction. And there's nothing that can replace what people can get from being in your presence, and the trust that can be built from being in your presence too. And that's probably what helped the group grow from 15 to 150 too.
Absolutely. Coming together and actually interacting in that way, it's impactful. It's a powerful thing.
So you mentioned some of the business challenges that you had with the music hall. Were there some growth pains as well from, managing from your side and everything as well?
Yeah, I was 23, all right? 23 and in charge of a 965-seat theater, and I had no idea. It was incredibly difficult, and I had self-doubt, I had fear of failure, I had fear of pleasing others, and I worked by myself for the first year and a half. I brought a slew of interns on from the College of Charleston, which was amazing, thank goodness for them. I made mistakes, but I realized that I was going to. It was just keep on pounding the doors, and the ones that are open are the right ones, and walk through them, and it's okay to make mistakes. I think that was difficult. Yeah, it was hard.
How did you end up adapting that mindset that it's okay to make mistakes? Was that something you were taught early on, or was that something you kind of had to learn yourself along the way?
I had to learn it myself along the way. But just from basically one too many panic attacks, and finally just okay, what's going on? What's wrong here? So yeah, just learning it the hard way. But also through, of course, through conversations with, I have amazing, beautiful, supportive parents and friends, and who I'm an extroverted processor naturally. So everyone hears everything of what's going on in me. So really finding the true relationships and friends that could help me get through stuff was huge.
That's wonderful. So what advice would you like to give to other millennials who are on this journey pursuing their passion and their purpose as well?
Like we just were talking about is, don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid of looking like a dummy. It's okay. It's all right to fail. We all do. That was a big one for me. But also, I think a lot of what I see of folks my age and younger and around me is just make a decision. just pick something for the love of Pete. It's okay if it's the wrong decision, but make the decision. You want to go to Thailand? Go to Thailand. Go hang out. Do your thing. You want to go get your master's in business management? Do it. But pick something and just throw yourself at it and work. That's the big thing too. It's just work your rear end off and it will work. I've seen that happen. You work hard enough at something and you put enough time into it, you can make it happen against all odds.
So what do you see as the benefit of just making a decision, choose something, even if it happens to be the wrong decision?
Yeah, I think it empowers you and enables you and it gets you out of your comfort zone and it'll ultimately grow you even if it's the wrong decision. You will grow in the right direction either way. And it also will destroy complacency. Complacency is death. The dynamism that comes behind that and moving is huge and important. And also, you're not going to be sitting there with what ifs at the end of your life. You're going to be sitting there with, and this is what I did. And I think that's huge.
Where do you think that indecision comes from? It sounds like you've perhaps worked with a lot of young people as interns or in other capacities.
Yeah, I've worked through like 75 interns at this point, so I have seen that. Where do I think it comes from? I think fear of making decisions. Also, we have so many decisions now, or at least there's so many seeming decisions. It feels like you can do anything, right? And it's tough to pick. But I just see that happening a lot where people get stuck in places they don't want to be because they won't make a decision to get out of it, or they won't make a decision to change it, or they won't choose between what they really want to do.
So shifting a bit into what gets you personally motivated, on your ideal day, what do you do when you wake up in the morning to ensure that you're going to have a great day?
I love that question. A big thing for me is routine in the morning and also getting jazzed and ready to rock. I bike into work 99% of the time, which has been huge for me. So for me to get ready and going for the day, I need to stretch and physically get ready, and I need to mentally get ready, which is usually hopping on my bike, putting on All Songs Considered or, Spotify playlist, and biking it out and just looking at the beauty of the world on the way into work. Go to a local coffee shop before every day, which I love. I interact with people. I see friends. I see folks I know. I have a little social time. And then boom, I'm in the office feeling pretty good.
That's awesome. Do you have, in addition to this morning motivation, a motivational quote or a book to share that has changed your life?
Yeah, I do, actually. So I love Patti Smith. I love her dearly. I love her music. I love her writing. I have a Patti Smith quote I found a few years ago, which has kind of been my mantra of late, which is build a good name, keep your name clean, don't make compromises, don't worry about making a bunch of money or being successful. Be concerned about doing good work. Protect your work, and if you build a good name, eventually that name will be its own currency. Life is like a roller coaster ride. It is never going to be perfect. It is going to have perfect moments and rough spots, but it's all worth it.
I feel like that's a great summary of the journey that you've shared with us so far.
Yeah, I love that.
And how do you feel like being a member of the millennial generation has influenced you and what you want out of life?
So as a millennial, I feel like we are coming out of a time of mythos and lies in a lot of ways, which is kind of brutal, but truly, we're fighting against the lies that our parents thought would bring happiness, is basically how I feel. They thought the American dream, money, suburbia, big cars, big business was going to bring happiness and freedom and health, and it did the opposite. I think suburbia is the death of society. I truly do. I grew up in a town called Mount Pleasant, for the love of Pete, all right? And it's a cultureless wasteland. It's a highway filled with pop-up stores, and there's no diversity, no real artistic community, and which to me is no real life. And I think a big part of being a millennial is realizing these lies and us reacting to them. I think reurbanization is a beautiful thing. I think the minimalist movement is huge and amazing. And that's kind of what I've set my kind of living standards, or tried to set my living standards on, is a very minimalist, I want to leave the earth better, not worse. And I think that a lot of millennials feel the same way. I mean, I know they do. We've seen the injustice, the racism, the sexism, the hate towards each other that happened over the last century, and we're finally starting to do something about it, which is, there's a lot of hope in that. American Dream doesn't have to look like a picket fence anymore. It can look like, anything you want it to look like.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've done a lot of work yourself to make that more of a reality by bringing people together across, not only obviously different music genres, but just different geographies, different ages. Do you feel like part of your mission has been to create more of that world that you want to see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even from showing films like Bikes vs. Cars, we showed that at the music hall last month, and we partnered up with Charleston Moves, which is this amazing organization in town that promotes pedestrian and bike safety and awareness. They just put a bike lane on a bridge that has killed dozens of bicyclists because it's so dangerous to get over. It's been amazing because I've been able to build events and work with folks like Charleston Moves to really further things that I believe in and also think that is going to help our community.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing all of your wonderful insights. Would you share with our audience the best way they can find out more about you and your work?
I don't have a website yet, but I will eventually. But charlestonmusichall.com is where you can find out about everything happening at the music hall. And you can find out more about what I'm doing at Murias Entertainment. Use on Facebook is the best way to do it. Well, it'll be muriasentertainment.com shortly. But right now, Facebook is the best means to figure out what's going on with everything we're doing.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, Charles, thank you again for taking time to talk to us today, and we wish you all the luck in your future endeavors.
Hey, thanks so much. Great to talk to you.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Workshops. Whether your desire is to connect with other millennials or to provide personal or professional development opportunities to your community, our workshops are customized for your needs. Visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/workshops to learn more.
Welcome to the after show of our conversation with Charles Carmody, which ironically rhymes with Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Indeed.
I really related to a lot of what Charles was talking about in the conversation, having been in the music industry myself. And something I really respected that he did with the Charleston Music Hall was taking the time and having the endurance to actually build up the community, the events, the relationships that resulted in the artists and the acts coming to the music hall. And that kind of endurance, I think, is really hard at the beginning of any kind of endeavor when you are starting out and no one knows you or doesn't necessarily respect you or know you well enough to respect you or whatever the case may be, because it can feel like, I'm trying to do something great here. Why am I not getting the response that I really want? Why can't you people see? And I relate to that a lot with the music industry. I think a lot of things that happen that get a lot of publicity in the music industry are the overnight success, quote unquote. It's the band rockets to the top with a record deal 6 months after their first show. Those are such outliers from the grind that it takes to build up a career. And really this applies to any profession or endeavor. And so I think what I really resonated with was that tenacity and recognizing that it's a long game.
One of the things that he mentioned doing was hopping in a car and going to Nashville and setting up all of these meetings, which displays a lot of initiative, but also has this spontaneity about it. And I'm wondering if there was a moment from your experience in your life when you also did something that took a lot of initiative and spontaneity that helped move things along in a way that may have been unexpected.
Absolutely. Saying yes to auditioning for America's Got Talent was incredibly spontaneous. The producers had called asking if our a cappella group, the Lost Keys in New York, that I was a part of, wanted to come in and audition. And it was really last minute. people were sick, they were out of town, and so I had to call the producer back and say, I'm sorry, our a cappella group can't make it. And so she said, well, we saw some of your freestyle rap videos. Would you be interested in coming in and auditioning? And in that moment, I said, yes! I had zero interest in reality TV. I didn't even realize till I actually got there to audition that you won $1 million if you won the whole competition. I was just, thinking about it in terms of, well, this could be really fun and a great adventure. So, and to your question, having done it kicked off really the hip hop motivational speaking career, and which I've been doing pro bono for a number of years, but sort of professionally after that, it was that final push of encouragement to really go for it. And then obviously having you, Ivy, joining me in that endeavor to help build this hip hop motivational tour around the country at schools. So yeah, that was a very spontaneous experience for sure.
That's amazing. So what made you say yes in that moment? Because you were like, yes? I'm wondering, why did you say yes?
I have a general policy that if I am afraid of something that has the potential to help people or to create some kind of meaningful impact, it usually means I should say yes, because it means I'm on the edge of my comfort zone. And the fact that I'm afraid is just a sign that I'm pushing myself to grow. So it also sounded really fun. That's the other thing. And so not all of my immediate yes decisions are about that. Part of it is so many positive things have happened in my life when I have said yes or started up that random conversation with the person standing next to me. And so increasingly, as I see opportunities arise, I do a schedule check in addition to the gut check. The schedule check is, can I fully commit to this and deliver on what I'm committing to in a way that will make sure it's a good experience for everyone involved? Because I don't want to say yes to everything and then be stretched so thin that I can't fulfill the things I've said. But that aside, I think yes is powerful until you finally hit the point where you need to start saying no.
So how do you know the difference between saying no because you truly don't have the capacity or the time, or saying no because your saboteur has told you that you don't have the capacity or the time, and so you're like, oh yeah, I totally can't do that, like I don't have time? Like, how do you know the difference?
It's a great question. I think it really relates to what is your ultimate outcome, and does this opportunity support your path to your ultimate outcome? What I mean by that is you can look at something that seems really fun and interesting, but it could totally be sidetracking you from the vision you have of where you want to go. And in that case, you might have to say not necessarily a hard no, but a not right now. Or you might look at something and say, gosh, like I am really stretched right now, but saying yes to this could mean immense movement forward in this area of my life where I have this goal and this vision. How can I get creative about restructuring my time or my obligations to actually be able to pursue this opportunity? And it's an art as much as a science.
Oh, yeah.
How do you figure out those opportunities and how you're going to respond to them?
Well, I think for me, anytime that I get really practical or overly practical, and that's the reason that I don't do things, it's almost always my saboteur, which took me years to recognize because I underestimate what I am capable of, which also took me years to realize. I underestimate my capacity and what I'm capable of. And in reality, I believe that I can do a lot more than sometimes I feel like I can. I think like my saboteur comes in and it's treating me with kid gloves. It's like, well, you don't want to push yourself too much. You don't want to overextend yourself, which is true. Again, the question being, it's an art to, I'm learning to differentiate the two, but there is a self-care voice that's like, you really don't want to overextend yourself, like let's take some breaks. But then there's the saboteur voice that's telling me you don't want to do too much. And what that does is treat me with kid gloves, meaning I'm treating myself like I'm not as strong as I actually am by being overly cautious or that sort of thing. So for me, I think up until this point, I can probably err on the side of it being my saboteur. More often than not, I think it's my saboteur. And if I really do need to take a step back, or I really do need to say no, it feels really natural. It feels really true. And I don't have to debate it. It's just like, no, this is not the right thing, or thank you so much for the super amazing opportunity, but this doesn't feel right. When there's clarity, it's actually not the right thing. But when I'm debating, I think sometimes I err on thinking, okay, I think I'm just talking myself out of something that seems scary when I'm totally capable of doing it.
Yeah. That goes to one of those quotes that I think can be a little problematic sometimes, but basically it's, if your reasons are more powerful than your excuses, you'll take action. If your excuses are more powerful than your reasons, you won't. And I think discernment is knowing the difference between reasons and excuses, because there's some valid, I need enough sleep, I need to eat, I need to exercise, all legitimate. At what point, though, do some of those things turn into excuses versus valid reasons? Like, oh, I really want to get this thing done, but I should go to sleep. I think when it turns into shoulds, it can be an indication of excuses coming in.
Yeah, but honestly, it just takes practice. It's like, no matter how much I can tell you how it works, it takes practice, and you're right, discernment, and learning to really be in touch with that part of yourself that is your compass. And that takes practice.
It does, and I'm not even sure I agree with the statement I just made about the shoulds as I'm thinking about it. I think, yeah, so often it's sort of the opposite. It's like when we say I should do something, it's the thing we think we want to do, but maybe we actually don't want to do it in the first place. So what we don't need are reasons to do it or excuses not to do it, but just clarity, like you're saying, around, is this actually in alignment with the goals that we want to pursue?
Yeah.
So what was one of your big takeaways from the conversation with Charles?
Well, the phrase that stood out for me was, complacency is death. It reminds me of how I feel when I think about not growing personally. It reminds me of, it's actually kind of a touchy topic that I'm bringing in. If I'm going to be totally honest with you, there's some emotional charge around it, because for me, I value so highly challenge and growth and development for myself, and believe in the impact that it has not only on my own life but the lives of others, that it gives me focus and it gives me drive. And now I'm here and I co-founded a company all about it. Like, I love it so much. And this is something that I've had to really learn to release. Oh my goodness. But particularly in the past, when there were moments that I didn't think I was capable of growing anymore, or I didn't think I was capable of achieving the goal that I set in front of me, or it felt like death, and it felt like my life was over if I couldn't grow further. It was very stressful, you know what I mean? Because it was such a huge value of mine. So like when he said that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's really how I could feel his emotional charge around that as well. Like it really feels that way. Like, and so I've definitely released feeling pressure around growth. And I have an amazing coach who has helped me with that, because she said, Ivy, you value growth so much that you don't need to force it so hard, okay? Like, it's going to happen, it's going to happen naturally, and you can just allow it to flow, and you don't have to force it. You don't have to stress out if there's that perception of not growing anymore, because it's going to happen. It's so important to you. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, but that to me was the biggest thing that stood out. Kind of my vulnerable answer there about that term, so.
Yeah, well, you're one of the most growth-oriented people I know, and I feel like every other day you walk in like, I just had this crazy revelation about how I'm operating in the world. And it is true, but you're right. I mean, we all live in our own heads, and so to you, it might feel like, oh, I'm not progressing as quickly as I would have liked. And from an external perspective, it's like, holy cow, like, you're going nonstop. Like, you have more like life revelations in a week than most people have in a year,
So funny. Oh gosh, yeah.
So how do you overcome that feeling of complacency?
Well, I don't have complacency. Like, I don't know what that feels like, really. I'm gonna be totally honest about that. Like, I really don't consider myself complacent. I feel like I find an area in my life where I want to grow, or I find different areas of my life where I set a new goal, and once I achieve it in that area, I'm like, okay, what's a new part of me that can grow? And I think the challenge may come in on the other end of trying not to be perfect, quote unquote, right? When the orientation of not being complacent and the drive comes from finding fulfillment and true peace and true presence and true enjoyment, it's a much more pleasant process of growth than when the whole motivation is to be some kind of weird perfect. I was going to say Barbie robot, and then I'm like, I'm a little curvier than that, so curvy Barbie robot. So complacency doesn't exist. Like, when I see something that I want to change in myself, like, I change it. It always takes time. Depending on what it is, it takes longer than others. It might take years. It might take a few months. And sometimes not feeling that complacency can be kind of stressful, if I'm going to be totally honest, because that's where the peace comes in.
Well, it's amazing that you've developed that, too. I mean, I feel like that's something that so many of us would like to achieve more of, is having an innate
thank you for that
opposition to
perspective shift.
Complacency. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think sometimes complacency can feel like comfort in a dangerous way, because it's, things are fine. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes we need fine. Fine is a stable place to catch our breath. Yeah. But I think living too long in fine and not checking back in with yourself can result in you headed down a road or spending a ton of time in a place that is not truly where you want to be, but it feels safe enough that you can just stay there. Moving is a good example. Like, I'm always so happy in the place I am living, and then, like, we move, and it's like, oh, this new place is really great, but leading up to it, it's like, oh, I don't know if we want to move, and, my wife Valerie's, like, super researching all the time, like, these different apartments, and hey, here's a cool place, and this, and I'm like, I know, but this place is fine. I mean, yes, rent is going up. I mean, maybe we can figure it out. But then, the move happens, and it's like, okay, this place is great. Like, moving out here to California has been awesome, so.
Yeah, and essentially you're able to discover that there was something even more awesome than where you were because you overcame the complacency of, I mean, there were other circumstances, but that's what kind of you're getting at, I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. It's that sometimes the fear of change can be keeping us from an even greater reality that's just one step away. Yeah. Or several states away, depending on where you're going.
3,000 miles.
That's right. Or the entire other end of the continent.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing all of that with me, Blake. I really appreciated it. And I really appreciate you and the audience giving me the opportunity and the safe space to share some of those deeper, more vulnerable insights.
Yeah, well, thank you. I feel like it was a great insight and reflection, and something we all are working on our respective journeys. And thank you for sharing that as well.
Well, I thank you so much for listening, everyone.
We look forward to being back with you next week.
Bye!
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!